Welcome to Accounting High.
So what? Why look at the previous 12 months? What benefit does that have for the business? And you can come in and this is where this number is important to them.
Yeah, so trailing 12, it normalizes over the course of a year. So you've basically covered every month. So if there's any seasonality or anything, again, if your net profitability is all over the place, we can't just look at 1 month because there's going to be huge swings. But if we look at over a year, it's pretty consistent if you look year over year. So just give you an example of a prospect we're talking to right now. It's a creative agency with 3 partners. And when I look at their profit and loss, their margins, their net profit percentage, it's like all over the place. But for the last 12 months, it's 40% net profit, which on the surface, you're like, wow, that's an amazing net profit. Because if you going back to the 50-30-20 rule, 20% is a really good net profit. So then the next question I have is, okay, well, they have 3 partners. 1, are they doing the work? Are they really up in COGS? And then 2, is their salary included in that net profit?
Check out the cash flow show. We discuss topics like getting paid on time, profitability, and managing your bottom line, payroll best practices, the best apps to use, and cash flow forecasting tools. So if you're a small business owner, your help's right around the corner. Fret not. Tune in as Scott and Nikole help you reach your goals on the cash flow show. The cash flow show. Listen and learn. We'll show you how to pay yourself on what your business earns. With Nikole and OKR.
We are live. We are recording live. Our show is live, open to the world. You can get it now on all the podcast players. Download it, check it out on Accounting High TV, on YouTube. This is the Cash Flow Show with Scotty and Nikole. What's up, Nix?
Hey, Scott. Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon for me, but hey, we're East Coast, West Coast. What are we talking about today, Nix?
Today, we're talking about everybody's favorite subject, KPIs.
KPIs. Now, please, before we go into acronyms, can you define what a KPI is? A key, and at least let's give an overhead little conversation about this just to get our listener to understand why it deserves an entire episode, why this powerful acronym deserves an entire episode on the Cash Flow Show.
Yeah. So KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator, and it's basically a measurable target that tells you whether your business or individuals in your business are performing in line to meet certain goals. So if you're looking at these metrics regularly, it helps you know if your business is on track or off track. So whenever I go to the doctor and they take my blood pressure and they give me, it's like 100/60 or whatever they tell me, I'm always like, but what does that mean? Like, is that good or is it bad?
That's a KPI though.
That's a KPI. So the KPI is my blood pressure. Is it good or is it bad? And when you send reports to your clients and you may have like a beautiful report on it and metrics and all these things, but if nobody is telling the business owner what the KPIs mean, then it's not very valuable for the business owner.
So if your doctor is not telling you what your blood pressure means, then just telling you that number is not very valuable to you as a person. When I go to the doctor, my doctor doesn't explain to me why my blood pressure is a certain way, or even if that's high or low. I have to usually ask the nurse, is that good or bad? They never even tell me if it's good or bad. They just say it with a straight face. It's always just like your blood pressure. And sometimes I have to look at the machine because they don't even tell me. They just write it down.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that means that it's okay. And hopefully if it wasn't good, then they might make certain recommendations. So They might say you need to manage your stress better. You need to limit alcohol. You need to exercise more. You need to lose more weight. So all of these things. So then what I might do is I say, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds. So that becomes another KPI or another target. And then I might say, well, what do I need to do in order to lose 20 pounds? Well, maybe I need to work out 3 times a week for 45 minutes. And then that becomes another KPI that I track. And so you can see how there's the objective, and then there are the activities that we do and manage on more of a day-to-day basis in order to get to the end objective. And so KPIs are the same concept, but in your business. We're starting with financial KPIs on our end, right? We're helping our clients with financial KPIs, and then they need to go into the operations of their business and give people, whether that be individuals or teams or departments, their own individual KPIs that then drive the financial results and financial KPIs. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
We're talking about being fiscally fit today. We're going to get you fiscally fit. We're going to bridge it with the physical fitness because that's how you brought in the subject today. And I love that. But we're going to get you fiscally or financially fit. What sounds better?
I think we want you to be well-rounded. So we want you to be financially fit, mentally fit, and physically fit.
Ooh, okay. We want the trifecta today. We're going to hit it with the trifecta. We're going to hit it with the big 5, actually. We're going to go even bigger than a trifecta. We're going to go over 5 big KPIs or things that you should be considering looking at in your business if you want it to thrive, if you want to be fiscally fit. I kind of like fiscally fit because it's got the FI.
Fiscally.
The fiscally fit, the fee for fef.
Yeah. So this has been a many year-long process to distill it down to the most simple possible KPIs that every single business can use without overcomplicating it. Because if you start getting into measuring things in KPIs, all of a sudden you'll end up with 100, and then you really have to distill it down to what actually matters. So behind every good KPI, there's a so what behind it. And so if you're looking at your KPIs that you're tracking, and if you look at them and it does not make you take any action, then you don't need to be tracking that one.
So they all have to have an action item, basically. Like, these numbers are no good to you unless they are something you can take action on. And that's something that we've talked about a lot, having these numbers be meaningful. So I like that. You give it a little catchphrase. So what? That's
exactly.
At least something that you can say every time. Okay, our numbers are down by 19%. So what?
So what? Yep. So what does that mean, and what do I do? And so we started working with Reach Reporting, I went on this whole journey of wanting to build my own reporting software. And then through that found Reach Reporting. So we started using Reach Reporting, and I wanted to build a financial assessment. So something that we could use during the sales process, but then also have it be our end deliverable that's standard for our customers. And so today we have this financial assessment that we use as part of our sales process. A prospect comes in, we do a sales call. And if they want to move to the next stage, we do a full discovery, and part of the deliverable is the financial assessment. At first, the first version of this financial assessment or health check, we've gone through different names of what we want to call it, was many, many pages. And then my team took it and they distilled it down to they simplified it basically based on what they thought was the most important. So it was a team effort to get it down to these 5 numbers or 5 KPIs that we'll be talking about today. But this financial assessment that we do allows us to peek on it. It's our first look at the business to see the health. It's all the gauges that helps me during the sales process have a conversation with a prospect about whether they have cash flow issues or if they have profitability issues. And I can see right away some of the trends or some of the patterns. And then it becomes a talking point of, this is like more than we usually see, or this is less than we usually see. How do you think about this? What are you seeing here? And so it just guides a really good conversation that we can have about what's happened historically in their business and some of the challenges we're having. So then we can say, okay, how can momentum help you correct these challenges that you're having?
I thought of a little catchphrase for what you do here. You take a peek under the hood to get them into peak performance. You get a peak with a peak?
Yeah.
You get it?
PE and the PEA.
I just thought of it
2
as
peaks.
I was reading through. Yeah, 2 peaks. Peaks and valleys, though. All businesses have peaks and valleys. but you help them by at least getting a general sense of what position they're in when you start with them, taking a peek under the hood, looking at the nitty gritty, and then trying to see what does it look like to get you into peak shape, peak performance shape, fiscally fit. And that's kind of what we're going to display here and what we're going to talk about here. What are some of those things that we should be looking at? So what?
First one, we already talked about on a previous episode. And if you remember, I talked about the 50-30-20 rule. So the very first thing that I always want to look at is trailing 12 months. What was their revenue, cost of goods sold, overhead, and net profit? And then looking at those percentages. What is the COGS as a percentage of revenue? What is the net profit as a percentage of revenue? What is the overhead as a percentage of revenue? Basically, your trailing 12 summarized P&L and then your margins. And then I want to see what is the average or total of those percentages, because a lot of times when prospects come to us, their accounting is not on accrual basis. So we'll look at, if you look at the visual of their revenue and their cost of goods sold and their overhead costs and profitability, it looks like a snake. It's like all over the place. We want that to be a nice, smooth, flat line, because that means your business, your financials are telling the story of your business. But if we're doing project invoicing where we may send a big invoice in 1 month, but really we're servicing that client over 3 to 6 months, then we've got costs that are not lining up with our revenue.
So what? Why look at the previous 12 months? What benefit does that have for the business? And you can come in and this is where this number is important to them.
Yeah. So trailing 12, it normalizes over the course of a year. So you've basically covered every month. So if there's any seasonality or anything, again, if your net profitability is all over the place, we can't just look at 1 month because there's going to be huge swings. But if we look at over a year, it's pretty consistent if you look year over year. So just give you an example of a prospect we're talking to right now. It's a creative agency with 3 partners. And when I look at their profit and loss, their margins, their net profit percentage, it's like all over the place. But for the last 12 months, it's 40% net profit, which on the surface, you're like, wow, that's an amazing net profit. Because if going back to the 50-30-20 rule, 20% is a really good net profit. So then the next question I have is, okay, well, they have 3 partners. 1, are they doing the work? Are they really up in COGS? And then 2, is their salary included in that net profit? So I go look at their balance sheet and I see that they're paying themselves a monthly distribution and a monthly distribution that says payroll on it. So I'm like, okay, this is really a guaranteed payment, or the owners, because as an owner, you are a employee and you are an owner. So you get your 20% plus you get your salary. And so then if I go add back the owner's compensation, then their net profit came down to 20%, which is great. So then the conversation that we're going to have next is, okay, if you guys are delivering all of the work right now, how do you scale your business so that you can maintain 20% profitability and hire employees? Because
and not work as much.
And not work as much. Because if the owners, we know this in a service-based business, Scott, if you and I go out and do billable work, like we can be incredibly profitable because we've got an extra 200,000, 300,000 that we could deliver if we really wanted to in revenue. But then we can't grow the business. And so that's why having good, solid margins that you can have foundationally and then scale on is really important.
Well, I get where you're going, but it sounds like what this does for the business owner is it helps tell the story of their business as to where they are in that moment of when you're looking at it. And you can decipher from that story what the next steps are to get them fiscally fit.
Right. So then what we might do with them is say, okay, if we want to replicate this business model where you're the owner making 20% and not having to do delivery work and move more into sales or business development, what does the business model look like in 3 years or over the next 3 years? Who do you need to hire? So it just like drives your decision. And then we have other prospects that come and their net profitability is super low. And so the conversation is, why is it so low? Well, is it up in COGS? As we talked about most of the time, it is a COGS problem. So is that a pricing problem? Is that your people are not working at a billable hour problem? Is it your costs are too high? You need to go look to offshore. It's just digging into, we know something's off. What's the story behind it? What do we do about it?
I love it. So that was benchmark trailing. That was telling the story of the business up until that date to get you primed to be able to help in the next phase. What are the things that need to change? I like that example of the owners and getting them to their next phase. So what's our number 2 KPI that we should be looking at?
So number 2 is days sales outstanding, DSO.
DSO, another acronym.
Another acronym.
Days sales outstanding. And what does that even mean?
So that's just a measure of how long it takes your customers to pay you on average. And it's a calculation because it's really, maybe there's some software out there now that makes it easier, but you'd have to go into every single customer and then say like, how long on average does it take them to pay me? And then take all your customers and like try to figure out. So this is basically your average accounts receivable over a certain time period divided by revenue times days in the period. So if you want more information on how to calculate it, you can Google it. There's tons of resources out there. So I won't go into that. But typically I like to track this trending over the last 4 quarters.
So looking back to see what their AR is like, give me an example of some businesses that have to have AR, because I think that there's also a way of rethinking AR in general, changing the way you price. If it's a professional services, changing the way you present the proposals and have no AR, which would eliminate this step altogether. But give me an example of some businesses that have to have AR. They have no choice.
Sure. Yeah. So there are a lot of businesses that can get away from AR, get paid up front, or even ones that sell things point of sale. This wouldn't apply to. But there are a lot of businesses that either still bill by the hour. I agree that we should be taking deposits or getting paid up front in those situations. But there are also a lot of businesses that are working with Fortune 500, mid-market, or bigger businesses.
They have net 30 terms and they can't just pay you up front.
Right. Standard for the industry is those are the terms. They may be 60, 90 days. I also have a client that's in the restoration and remediation industry. He gets paid by insurance companies. Insurance companies may take 90 days to pay. So those are all things you need to consider when you're thinking about margin. Now, in this industry that I was just talking about, they have really high gross profit margin. And so because they have excess cash, really high margins, they can wait 90 days to get paid. But it's still, that's a huge KPI that we look at for them, because we want to make sure whoever's managing receivables or dealing with the insurance adjusters, that we're closely monitoring that number, because if you take your eye off of it, then all of a sudden things can flip really quickly. Yeah, you don't get paid.
Well, yeah, people don't get paid, and then employees can't get paid because we're running into cash flow issues. This is one of our number one cash flow issues right here, is making sure you're getting paid on time.
Right. And so you want to set a target based on your industry standards. So like if it's 30 days, if it's 60 days, 90 days, set a target and then track that trending. And hopefully you've delegated AR as the business owner. And it's just a way for you to keep an eye on it without having to be in the weeds all the time.
So this is a KPI that you set and you try to improve over time if you're working with somebody closely. Or you see where it's at, and do you say that's reasonable, we want to maintain? Is that also a scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is a number that we look at on our financial assessment. And so if it's a big number, then it's a conversation starter. Sometimes I can see it either go down or going up, and I'm like, okay, what's the story behind this? And then the business owner will be like, oh, I had this lady that was doing it, and then I didn't realize she wasn't sending them out, and then we fixed it. And so then it's like, okay, yeah, I can see how it was like went up and then it went down. And so obviously there is an issue there. So there's
always a story behind some of those aberrations.
Yeah.
It's always interesting. Yeah, the more you talk about it.
And then the other way we can use this number is if you want to start doing forecasting, cash flow forecasting, then we can use that as an estimate for so if you make a sale on day 1, how many days does it take that revenue to then turn into cash? So it's the foundation for forecasting.
For sure. Yeah. All of this is foundation for something, at least compared to the businesses that don't have these numbers and that can't look at this stuff. So having this is better than not having it. And then it's a step up to get to forecasting. So what's our next? So what? This is important. So you're getting paid so you don't run into problems. So what on this number?
Right. This is like one of the biggest, this is your revenue, right? This is the blood the lifeblood of your business. So what is, if you're not managing your AR, you're not going to get paid. You're not going to be able to make payroll. So go yell at the person who's managing AR if it's going off track.
All right. Months of cash reserves. That's a foundational number. That's pretty important, right? What's going to get you through a drought?
Yeah, we talked briefly about this during our Getting Paid episode. And cash reserves is when deciding. So basically, it's the amount of cash you have in your bank account divided by your average monthly expenses. So like if revenue went to 0 today, how many months could you get by to cover all of your expenses? That's the calculation. And typically I recommend that this number be anywhere between 2 and 4 months. But we talked about this, I think it was in episode 2, about when a business has higher risk, you need more in cash reserves versus a business that has lower cash risk. So higher risk would be you have projects, not recurring revenue, you get paid after the fact, maybe you have inventory. So these are all situations where you, especially with projects, right? Your pipeline could dry up and all of a sudden you've got a drought that you have to cover, versus a recurring revenue business getting paid first. You have a lot lower risk of like all of a sudden your revenue going away. It's a little more steady eddy. And then you have your individual risk profiles. Some people are really conservative and they want to keep a lot of big cash cushion. Some people are like, let's have the minimum in the bank account that I possibly can have, so then I can go leverage my money elsewhere, whether I'm putting it in real estate or putting it back in my business or putting it in stocks, bonds. And a lot of times, because these are owner managed businesses, like for me, for example, like I take all my money out of the business and then I'll go put it in another investment or in an interest bearing account or something, right? So on paper, it may not look like I have a bunch of cash in the account, but I have access to outside capital, which is my own capital.
And me, I'm the opposite. I have way too much cash sitting in the business. I don't do anything with it.
See, I don't like idle cash sitting around.
I have so much idle cash. It's just there.
Well, maybe you should lend it at a high interest rate to businesses that need it.
I should do that. Yeah, that's the start. Our cash flow show. We're gonna plug your cash flow holes, cash holes.
You can also include so you have a line of credit. You can include your line of credit availability in your cash balance. So if you had like $200,000 in cash in your bank account, you may, and then you have like, say you have like a $200,000 line of credit that you haven't drawn on. You might say, okay, my actual cash balance, I'm saying cash balance in quotes, is 400,000 that I have available to access.
I like it. I like having more cash to access. Gives more flexibility. What is this number good for though? Once you have it, so what?
So that helps you guide decisions on hiring, on investing in marketing, on when you can take out a distribution. If you have multiple partners, you may have your regular salary, and then you say, hey, if we get up to X amount in cash reserve, anything over that, then we'll allow a distribution to the partners.
So this is basically just a bank balance converted into how long it's going to last you.
Yeah. And once you do the calculation, all you need to say, like, as long as them do it every so often as your business grows, you probably have more expenses. But for the most part, you can say, hey, like 200,000 is the number. Let's just keep our eye on that. Let's set that as a goal. We'll reevaluate it in 6 months, something like that.
I used to call it my zero number. If that was the number, then anytime it was below 200, it was nothing. That's the way I would look at it. That's my above water number. If I'm below that number, I'm below water.
Because it's not growing, right?
Yep.
So the fourth one is customer concentration.
And how do you get this number? What does this even mean?
We need to be careful about scaling quickly on the backs of just a couple customers. And this is something to think about. It becomes more important if you're going to sell your business, but it's something to think about when you're operating, when you're making decisions about working with certain clients and investing more in your operating costs in order to manage large customers, large clients. So typically you don't want one customer to be more than like 10 to 15% of your revenue. Because what happens is, let's say you have a customer that's half of your revenue and you keep hiring more people to service that business. And then if that business terminates the contract or they go out of business, then all of a sudden you need to lay off half of your staff, or you're operating at a loss for a certain amount of time. And so we want to make sure that we're not working with customers that just drain all of our energy and our resources, and we are not focusing on growing a healthy business. We're focusing on servicing that client. And this has happened to me before, where I had a client that was like 20% of my revenue. We were small, so we could get away with it. I was delivering a lot of the work, so it wasn't like I was going out and hiring more people, but it did stagnate my growth. I wasn't out doing business development. I was like, kept getting sucked into this client. And that's really common with service-based businesses. As the partner, principal, owner, you tend to get sucked into the larger
It's hard to say no
engagements.
to a really, really big contract or big engagement. The whales are fun to chase. And when you have one, it's like, wow, like it's all dollar signs at that moment. And you don't see past that until you can look at it from another, or somebody else can look at it from a perspective of you're basically working for that client at a certain point. I had one that was factoring all their invoices, and I talked about it. I briefly touched on it in an episode, Cogs, and everything was coming from John Deere. Like that was his one client. That was it. So if they weren't paying him, or he had to factor to, like, all of this was easy to fix over time, but we had to diversify a lot. Like one client can't feed the whole business, because once you lose that contract, you don't have a business.
Exactly. It can go away. It can go away overnight.
Yeah.
And if you go to sell your business, a lot of times the buyer will exclude those larger concentration of customers from the valuation. So it can significantly reduce your valuation. So there's some things, like if you do want to take on a bigger client, there are a lot of opportunities I found for learning. And so you can continue to get bigger and bigger customers and scale up your business that way. And there are things we can do to protect ourselves. So you may have like a cancellation clause in your contract. So they have to give you X amount of months notice, but those aren't always enforceable. Again, if the business doesn't want to pay you, or they go out of business, you're screwed there. Or another thing that I've done before is like a phase out plan. So we know it's going to be a big spike in work. We're happy to do that and take on this big project for a few months. And then after the project's over, or as we will phase out, so maybe we're charging $10,000 one month, and then it comes down to $5,000, and then $2,000. And then so we're switching our team's capacity from that client to another client over time, just giving ourselves more time to get our together.
So it doesn't shock the system.
So it doesn't shock the system. I don't think this is something you need to look at all the time, but it's something to keep in mind. And maybe when you're looking at your portfolio, you're checking that every quarter or so.
Okay. Phase 5, fifth KPI.
Okay, so all the other ones we've talked about have been more financial KPIs, so you can take them straight from your balance sheet or your income statement. This last one is for you to choose one important operational KPI based on your business model.
That's probably the most important one.
Do you have anything that you track?
Yeah, we have a lot. The only numbers that I actually track right now are our monthly recurring revenue, our number of clients, and actually those are only the two I can think of off the top of my head. I have some other key predictive indicators or things that I'll pull in, like how often is the team meeting with clients? How many client meetings have they had in the week? And that's everybody's, and it rolls up, and I can see that one number. So I know if that number is going up or down to see how our relationships are going and how things are going, because that's the one thing that we can control is our communication and our relationship with them. And if that number is going down, then we're having less client contact.
What was the reason that you put the meeting as a KPI? What triggered that as like, that's an important KPI?
Yeah, because everybody kind of wanted to shove aside the client interactions because they just were tunneled into just the work. And I feel like when clients leave, it's typically because they're not communicating with us. Anytime a client would ever leave, it was because of a lack of miscommunication, or the accountants typically did not really want to have client communication. So this was one of those things that I encouraged. Now that they've been tracking it, now that they actually do it more, they actually appreciate their time with the clients, and they look at and they see that as a positive. It wasn't something they dreaded because we got rid of the clients too. So it took a lot of work, but now it's something that they actually look forward to meeting with their clients, and they like that relationship. Whereas before they saw it as just a necessary evil, and they didn't really want it because the too few bad clients that they had overshadowed all the great ones and the good relationships that they had.
So maybe your other KPI there is like customer retention. Does customer retention improve when you have meetings?
we have a bunch of numbers that are there that are all tracked. And the two that I look at are typically the ones that rolled up to the top, the monthly recurring and how many clients, our average, what the average client's paying per month too. I think that's the third one. And then there's like a churn number. Whenever clients leave, that number gets adjusted. But if clients aren't leaving and everything's pretty steady, then I don't really ever look at that number much.
Okay. So that all ties back to revenue. So the meeting conversation has come up recently at our team because about a couple of years ago, we started just making monthly meetings mandatory with our clients. But then now the team's like, we have so many meetings during the week that we can't get our work done. And so we're trying to find that balance. And actually, our margins have gone down, and we've got like the reach reports now and the meetings. But at the same time, I do think we don't do a lot of training. We're a small company, but we have so much that we learn by talking to our clients. So like for me, I think of it as like training time. When we're talking to our clients, we're understanding what their issues are, and it makes us better advisors, even though like it's less profitable to have the meetings. It's more valuable for the client and it's more valuable for a team member.
Well, if you're charging enough and the clients are paying for those meetings, then it doesn't mean it's less profitable, because those meetings could be baked into a price that they're paying. So up front, like one could include the meetings and one could not. You know what I mean? Like a price option.
Right. And that's what we're trying to get down to is, okay, we want to make sure we're not over servicing clients that don't value it, and that we're giving the right service level to the clients who do need it.
Let's pull it back for the listeners too, to see how this impacts them. You know, they need to find something that can help drive positive changes in the business too. I think the number needs to be a predictive. This is where I was going to talk about my definition of KPI and where that differs from a key performance indicator to a key predictive indicator to help you predict what's going to happen and help you make those next phase changes. So what are the things that predict positive outcomes? And if these numbers are trending in a positive way, then all those other numbers that we looked at are going to be good. If we can do a few of these driving changes in our business or in how we operate and make sure those numbers kind of drive those decisions.
Yeah. So I'll give you a couple of examples of operational KPIs that you might track. And these are more revenue related. There's all sorts of KPIs you can do. So one might be like, so let's say you're like a blue collar service company. We have a certain amount of jobs a day. You might do sales per day or sales per week. And that would tie back to a revenue goal. So let's say you have a break-even number, your break-even revenue per month, let's say it's $100,000. And then you divide that into how many days there are on a month and say, okay, this is how much revenue we need to make each day in order to break even. And then here's our goal number. And so if things are off track during the month, during that like day by day, you can make quick decisions rather than waiting till the end of the month and say we didn't reach our target. You could say, hey, salespeople, like you can't go home until we've got X amount of sales today. And it allows you just to like be on the pulse of it rather than, again, waiting till the end of the month to like figure out what went wrong there.
What kind of business is this that these sales employees have to stay late? They're going to miss dinner because they got to hit their sales for the night. What kind of business is this that we're talking about?
So that could be like an e-commerce company where you have a sales team,
Yeah.
Not one where they go buy online, but maybe there's a technical component where they need to talk to somebody before they make the purchase.
Could be a software company.
It could be a software company. Yeah, that's true. Anytime we have like salespeople that are like on the phone every day.
Always schmoozing. They're
Schmoozing.
Client representatives now. Like they changed the name of a salesperson to like I hear a BD, business development. I see that a lot. People disguise that. And they say customer success. Customer success is usually sales. Customer success reps or those kinds.
Yeah. And I would say like on your LinkedIn, if you're a business development professional, don't put that on there because then we already know you're going to sell to us. Just say what problem you solve through whatever you're selling. My little plug of advice
LinkedIn
there.
tips. Please give me some more of those because I always ignore anybody that's trying to connect with me. That's like some form of sales. I ignore it. Now people are trying to sell me custodian services too, because I'm the rapping custodian at Accounting High. So I'm getting that as well. It's great. I've created this new way to get sold to.
That's hilarious. Because did I tell you that Momentum Janitorial was on one of those public websites and it had my contact information. So I was getting like emails every day for janitorial services too.
Maybe we should get into janitorial services. Since you're already getting confused for that, and so am I. We might as well just clean up house too.
So those are some of my most profitable clients that are in the janitorial maintenance.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I have one prospect right now that they don't actually do the maintenance work. They just are the sales, marketing, and project management. And so they subcontract and the branding, and they subcontract it to other small companies.
Oh, wow. That's important. Merry Maids, I'm sure they make a killing. Their branding is, I mean, I see them a lot. They just have their cars out there and everybody wears their Merry Maids outfits. They're probably doing very well for themselves.
So blue collar recurring revenue businesses are super hot right now. HVAC, cleaning companies. So that's what a lot of
Oh, yeah, the franchises. The franchises. People want to buy into those franchises in certain areas and just take over that.
And a lot of these like blue collar businesses are started by blue collar people. So they're kind of like mom and pop businesses. And then we've got people that are going through programs, whether it be an MBA program or like a search program where they learn how to buy a business. And so they'll come in and implement technology. All of these things we're talking about right now, like, they'll come into these blue collar companies that are billing in arrears, they have cash flow issues, and they'll come in and say, okay, we're getting paid up front. And then all of a sudden that like transforms the business. We're going to implement modern CRM. And so anyway, that's really hot right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's probably like what PE is going to eventually come in and start buying up all of these small ones too. Small regional HVAC and turn it into a franchise, or turn it into a larger organization, a brand.
Right. A lot of people doing that. They'll buy multiple and do consolidation. Okay. So
we see a lot in professional service space, but I haven't seen it in the blue collar space yet. So.
Okay. So I wanted to just give one more example of an operational KPI that I personally like to track. I'm obviously a service-based business, recurring revenue model. So I like to look at revenue per direct full-time employee or full-time equivalent.
Okay. And why? So what?
If you remember, I think it was our last episode, I was talking about it was our first episode, COGS episode. If you're a service-based business, how much each employee who's doing client-facing work should generate in revenue. And I said it should be 3 times their salary, fully burdened salary. If we take their annual salary, we multiply it times 3, that's their annual revenue they should generate. We divide that by 12, and that's the monthly revenue they should generate. So what I like to do is just take the total cost of all my employees, multiply it by 3. And this is only the employees that are doing direct client work. I'm not our operating employees, like my admin, I don't include, myself, I don't include. And multiply that by 3 and then divide it by 12. And then I'll take that number and then the number of, so let's say I have 5 client-facing employees. I take whatever the monthly revenue is and divide it by the full-time equivalent number. Does that make sense?
And it's all based on certain, like you're backing into this number. So you kind of are generating a number that you can actually obtain. You're creating all of this backwards. It's not just some phantom number. This 3 times is based on how much you're paying all those people. Mm-hmm. All your costs associated with those employees, multiply that by 3. And then now you're backing into, this is the target at least. You could try to reach for the stars and go beyond that. That's great. But this is kind of your baseline of what you should be hitting. Is that right?
Yeah. And the so what behind that could be a capacity issue. Like if your team's at capacity and you haven't met this revenue per FTE goal per month, then you have a pricing problem. I also like to use it for when I do my budget for the year and I'm planning the year. Whenever I'm saying, okay, like in my forecast, when I hit this revenue per employee, that's when I know I need to hire my next employee. So like I know in May, based on my revenue projection, that's when I need to hire my next employee. So then I'm thinking, okay, that means in April, I'm going to need to think about putting up a job posting, backing into that. But it's a quick and easy way to decide, like make hiring decisions, think about capacity, think about pricing. It all ties back into your cost of good and revenue area.
Yeah, for sure. What are some other operational KPIs we could potentially look at for different types of businesses?
Well, then you might get into KPIs for departments. So your marketing has all sorts of KPIs. Your sales team might have sales targets.
Each department has different things that they're tracking that rolls up into different management reports too. So we can get very granular with this. Let's just not slide over the fact that any number can be tracked, but it's what are the most important ones to that department, and that can drive the change in there and move things forward. So it could be like certain numbers that are followed in a lag that already happened, like churn. That's a lag. That's already happened. The client's already left, or returns, or something that's a negative product of something else that you're doing. If you drive back to the source of that and then track a number that you can prevent these things from happening, then you won't have to worry about the churn. You won't have to worry about the returns because less people will be returned.
A client we're onboarding right now, but during the sales process, I pulled up the financial assessment. I'm like, you got a profitability problem. He's like, yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, I don't know why. I just know that it exists. And so he's like, I know why. And so they do some sort of technology consulting projects for companies across the United States. All of their people are in San Francisco. He's like, it's rework. So we'll go fly to New York and do a project, and then we don't do it right. So I have to send my entire team back for a week, flights, hotel, 3 people. It could cost me $30,000 that I can't get paid for because it's our fault because we screwed up. So then it's like, okay, let's get back to what are the operational issues that are creating this rework. And then you can create KPIs around that, whatever their process is. But it starts, that's why it's so fun because everything ties back to the financials. And then if you dig deeper, you can figure out what the problem is. And then you can write an SOP or have metrics that you track in order to manage and solve that problem.
Yeah, this is the skeletal system. Well, this is also going back to your first analogy. This is the blood vessels going and pumping. This is the heart of the business. The financials are the heart of the business. So, and the cash flow is the money that's getting pumped everywhere to keep the business afloat. So that's why we get so excited when we talk about the financials and pulling up these numbers and tracking the KPIs, because we know this is make or break for some businesses. We know that if they don't have these systems and they don't have things in place and they're not fiscally fit, they're drowning, they're underwater, and the business doesn't survive. This is why we're so passionate about it, because we don't like to see businesses open one day and then shut the next. Like, we don't want our downtown to keep changing over. These restaurants keep closing down, and it's because they're not managing their money. They don't have these kind of metrics to look at to help drive change. And sometimes it's too late. By the time they start paying attention to it, damage is already done.
Yeah. So if you're just getting started and you don't have your financial house in order yet, just start with one really important KPI you can identify that the team can follow, and then build on top of that. But keep it simple. That's the best way to approach it. So let's just go back real quick and repeat all of those 5.
Yeah. And the first 4 were basically historical numbers. These are things that have already happened, and it just gets you in the right place. And the next one are things that could be anything. So this is why we talked most about number 5. But let's go back and let's do a review.
Scott, do you want to summarize for us?
Yeah. You're going to want to look at your financials, the benchmark trailing. You're going to want to look at your sales, your AR trending days sales, outstanding DSO. You're going to want to look at your bank balance, making sure you got enough cash and reserves, month's cash reserve. You're going to want to look at your customer diversity or customer concentration, how diverse your customer base is. You don't want to rely too much on just 1 or 2 clients. And your 5th one, and I think the most important, is an operational KPI. You're something that can be a predictive indicator that can predict how to make positive impact and change in your business before it gets to be too late. So think of something very aspirational there. This has been a wonderful episode on the review of how important key performance indicators are to make or break your business.
Yeah, and it's funny though, if you just boil it down to these few things, it can tell you if you're on or off track pretty easily, and you know where to look.
And then, so what? Always got to say, so what? If anybody's going to present you with a bunch of numbers to track, you should be saying, so what too.
Just keep saying, so what, like a kid that's like, what? Why? So what?
I love it. I love it when they do that because then it really, you also feel like it's a therapist too. Therapists do that, or kids do that. My kids are my therapist these days. I just let them ask me why, till I get to the core of it. All right, this makes the most sense now. Like you really get to the reason why you're doing something.
Cool.
Well, what's in tune next week at the Cash Flow Show? What's in store?
Next week is reporting rhythms.
Ooh, the double R.
What kind of reports, this KPIs will be part of the regular reporting that you're getting, but on a daily, weekly, quarterly, monthly, annual basis, what are all the rhythms in your accounting cycle?
Yeah, the seasons.
This
is all seasonal sometimes too. So we can talk about the rhythms and the seasons. I love that. We might have to do a recording. We might have to double play our Cash Flow Show because that's rhythms too. That's got some great rhythm to it. Outro us with that. Thanks for recording today, Nix.
Yeah, good to see you. See you the next one.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Peace out, homies. Class dismissed.
Yeah. So you're drowning in cash flow issues. You run a business, but feel like it's running you. Customers won't pay, but you got bills due. It appears you won't have enough for payroll coming up soon. It seems like you running nowhere fast. You work hard, but never able to withdraw cash from the business. You get more customers, hire more employees, but still take home hardly anything. You feel like you're on a hamster wheel, frustrated cause the battle's always uphill. Even though you got a bookkeeper on your team, they send you reports, but you don't really know what they mean. Your CPA doesn't understand a thing about your business, at least that's how it seems. But if you want to get above water and grow, check out the Cash Flow Show. This is the Cash Flow Show, where we help the small business gain momentum and become profitable. This is the Cash Flow Show. Listen and learn. We'll show you how to pay yourself on what your business earns. Cash Flow Show. Discuss topics like getting paid on time, profitability, and managing your bottom line, payroll best practices, the best apps to use, and cash flow forecasting tools. So if you're a small business owner, your help's right around the corner. Fret not. Tune in as Scott and Nikole help you reach your goals on the Cash Flow Show. The Cash Flow Show, where we help the small business gain momentum and become profitable. The Cash Flow Show. Listen and learn. We'll show you how to pay yourself on what your business earns. Cash Flow Show. Our advice will take you far. Cash Flow Show. Tune in with Nikole and OKR.